Hey pen people, this is a Moleskine notebook. Moleskine, Moleskine, Mol something. It's spelled Moleskine, I'm gonna go with that. So I got this notebook while I was still using ballpoints, and then I moved into felt tip pens, and then I moved into fountain pens. And can I let you in on a little secret? It sucks. It does, it sucks. It's bad. But I hear about fountain pen people really swearing by it still, and I'm like, what are you doing? There's better stuff out there in the same price range. Stuff that's meant for fountain pens, and you'll have a much better experience with them. Even if you're using pencils, there's better stuff out there. So what I want to do today is show you why this sucks and show you 5 alternatives that I like much, much better. Why does this Moleskine suck? What do I have against it? So there are 2 main problems that I see with the Moleskine notebook, and those are the durability and the paper quality. So durability on these corners here, the outer leatherette has broken open and has peeled back, exposing the cardboard underneath, some of it quite badly. So the corners there, as well as on the spine is kind of splitting there, exposing the material underneath. I don't know, you could say that's just normal wear and tear, but with some of the other notebooks I'm going to show you, that doesn't happen. And I've used them for a long time too. I've put some of these notebooks through the ringer and they have held up way better. Another thing I've noticed is the cover starting to separate a little bit from the cardstock inside here. So that's not ideal. It makes me worry that my spine is gonna, suddenly break or something. So a lot of concerns as far as longevity, durability, especially if you're gonna be traveling with this thing, taking it places, pulling it in and out of a backpack, purse, all that kind of stuff. I just don't think it's gonna hold up as well as other things in this price range. Okay, and paper quality, it's not great, to be honest. When I got my first Pilot Metropolitan and went to write, I was amazed with the pen, but I was a little disappointed with the paper and a little frustrated. There's a little bit of bleeding, not too much, but more than you'll see with some of these other papers I'm going to show you. But the thing that really frustrated me most about this wasn't the bleed through or ghosting or any of that kind of stuff. It was that sometimes I would be writing and suddenly the ink would just get weird and it felt like the ink wasn't sticking to the paper. And I wasn't sure what was going on. And then I noticed that there was kind of a pattern to it. These little stripes in my writing. It was very odd. And suddenly I realized, oh, those are my fingerprints. When fingerprints get on this paper, it becomes very hard for fountain pen ink to lay a consistent line on this paper. And I have noticed that with other notebooks, but this seems to be particularly susceptible to it. And it makes it a little bit unreliable and not a very enjoyable experience, in my opinion. Okay, I think we've roasted this poor notebook enough. Let's move on to the alternatives, the ones that I would recommend. I'm going to do my best to show some nice footage of these notebooks, of the pages and the different features and stuff. It's a little difficult because a lot of these I have filled up with my personal writing, and so I don't really want to show that off on camera, but I will do my best to show you some close-ups that give you an idea of what these notebooks are like on the inside. And I'm going to start with a couple that are a little bit different. They might not be direct competitors with Moleskine, with that style of notebook. But then I'm going to move into notebooks that do use a very similar design, that do compete a little more directly with what Moleskine's doing. So our first one, and the one that's most different from Moleskine, is Midori. It is a Japanese brand that makes very nice paper, very nice notebooks. It's very minimal. You can see it doesn't even really have a traditional cover. It has this, I forget what it's called, but this cloth that goes over the spine and is glued on, that's exposed. The top of the bookmark here, where that is glued on, that's exposed. The cover is just some cardboard, just very thick, sturdy cardstock. It's quite nice. I like it a lot. I keep it in a slipcover that I've made myself. I don't know why that keeps coming up. I keep mentioning this in my videos. But if you want to go check out my video where I talk about making slipcovers and how you can do that, I'll stick a link up here somewhere. You can also buy slipcovers specifically made for Midori, but you can also make them. Anyway, it is different for sure. Different design, very minimal, but that's actually really nice because it makes it pretty cheap. I can get these on Amazon for 10 bucks sometimes, like half or less than half of what a Moleskine notebook would cost. It's very reliable, easy to use. The paper is great. If you like Moleskine paper, but you want to try something better, I feel like you're really going to like this because texture-wise and different things, moving from a Moleskine to a Midori isn't going to be a huge shock or adjustment. You're just going to love it. It's just going to be what you like about Moleskine, but 100 times better. Okay, moving on to number 2, we have a Clairefontaine notebook here. And Clairefontaine makes lots of different kinds of notebooks. Some of them are a little more Moleskine-esque. I haven't had much experience with those, but I think even those are still a little more minimal. This is one of their most basic ones. I really like it. It's cloth bound. I think it's perfect bound. So it's just a glued cloth binding. Really pretty. Comes in different colors. Mine's not pretty anymore because I've been using it and it's a little worn. But I feel like that's part of the appeal of having a paper cover. You know, you break it in. It's you. It shows its experience. If you want, you can make a slipcover, like I said, so you can preserve this and keep it nice. Now, Clairefontaine is really amazing, especially if you're using fountain pens. Not everyone likes it because it is pretty different from something like Midori. So Midori has a little bit of a texture to it, like most papers do. So you'll feel just maybe a little bit of feedback from it as you write. There's much less of that with Clairefontaine. It has a specific kind of finish on the page that makes it really buttery smooth. So if you have a really smooth fountain pen and you are using this very smooth paper, it's just going to feel like you're writing with melted butter. It just glides. And some people love that and some people don't. Some people want that feedback. So it's very subjective, but I really like it. I think it's really nice. And this paper, it's 90 GSM. It rarely, if ever, bleeds. It's very resistant to feathering and all the other problems that you can run into. So extremely reliable, a very luxurious feel to the paper, but in a package that is kind of minimal and doesn't cost a lot of money. So like the Midori, this is pretty cheap. Now for number 3, we are getting more into the Moleskine design a little bit. So this is a Rhodia Webnotebook, and I love these things. These things are awesome. And don't mind this. This is me. I had like a labeling system on my notebooks for a little bit and I decided I didn't like it. So I tried tearing it off and it messed up the cover. I won't dock any points for that. So this notebook is really cool. It has a leatherette cover that is kind of squishy. Not super squishy. I've seen them squishier, but there's just a slight squish to it. And I really like that. It's a very soft and smooth feel to it. Just, oh, it's nice. The orange is fun. The orange accents, and this thing is just built like a tank. It has some scuffs along the corners from use, but really it's held up pretty well, to be honest. Some scratching a little bit, but it's durable. It is a durable notebook. The one thing I would say that Moleskine does better, their elastic might be slightly better. There's nothing wrong with this. I like this elastic. I think Moleskine's bookmark ribbon is way better. This feels just like a cheap, flimsy ribbon, but you don't buy a notebook because it has a nice ribbon. You buy it because it has nice paper or whatever. But these are very nice notebooks. And the paper, if I'm not mistaken, in the web notebook it's 90 GSM, but I'm pretty sure it's actually Clairefontaine paper. I'm pretty sure that Rhodia and Clairefontaine are owned by the same company. So this is 90 GSM. If you buy a more basic Rhodia notebook, it's probably going to be 80 GSM. I haven't noticed a huge difference between the papers though. They're both really nice. Clairefontaine, Rhodia, they're a very similar experience. You probably won't be able to tell the difference. Before we move on to number 4, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button or considering subscribing, I would really appreciate that. That's the best way that you can support me and help me grow my channel. Okay, for number 4, we've got the Endless Recorder. This is a really interesting notebook. I learned about this more recently from watching YouTube videos about fountain pens and notebooks and things. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's really pretty. I think I want one now. So they go with a blue accent, a light blue accent, which is really nice. And this cover, it's that leatherette kind of idea, but they take a different approach than Rhodia does. Rhodia is kind of squishy. This maybe a little bit, but less so. It has more of a textured feel. Instead of just being like a smooth surface, there's more of a texture just pressed into this. So you can kind of feel it's kind of this tactile kind of experience. It looks really nice. I think it's even more of a tank than the Rhodia. This thing has held together extremely well. It is a strong, durable notebook. The bookmarks are fraying a little bit, but I do like them better than Rhodia's. Now, this notebook has what's called regalia. I'll go with regalia. It has regalia paper, which a lot of people just love. That it's just like to die for them. And I can totally see why. If you are into shimmering inks, sheening inks, shading inks, this is your notebook. It will show that stuff off like crazy. Even Noodler's black sheens in this thing, like everything sheens. It's pretty crazy how it brings out the sheen in inks. There are two things I don't like about this paper, and they're kind of deal breakers for me. So I tend to stick more with Midori, Clairefontaine, Rhodia. Those are kind of my three at this point. There are other good ones. I just haven't really fully explored them yet. But while this paper does do awesome things with ink, it has the same problem that the Moleskine does with fingerprints. And I don't even think it was just my fingerprints. I think it was like fingerprints from the manufacturing process. Like I feel like on page 1 I was writing and then suddenly just weird skippy things and weird lines in the ink and different things. I don't know. So this is great with ink until it's not, I guess. And your mileage may vary. I've never heard of anyone else complaining about that. Maybe I just got a notebook from a bad batch of paper. I don't know, but it is really nice. It is, but there's that fingerprint issue, I guess. The other thing that is maybe not a deal breaker, it's just odd, it wasn't my favorite, is that this notebook tends to make your writing a little wider. It might take you up a nib size. I don't know why, but it does. So just keep that in mind. Before we hit our 5th and final notebook, I have to explain one difference that this notebook that we're about to talk about has compared to the ones that we've just talked about. These all have really nice paper, right? But that means that the paper tends to be thicker and you're not going to be able to hold as much paper in a notebook that's the same size or a similar size as a Moleskine. Moleskines have 240 something pages. These have more like, I want to say 150 to 190 pages, somewhere in that range. So there's kind of a quantity versus quality balance happening, and you have to kind of decide, do I want the quantity or the quality? But with our next one, you get both. And this is our most similar to Moleskine. In a lot of ways, it kind of fills the very same niche that Moleskine does, but it just does so much better in filling that niche than Moleskine, in my opinion. And that is Leuchtturm 1917. And I have 2 of them here. I actually have a bunch of these because I keep journals with my wife, and these have been kind of our go-to because they're in the same or similar sort of price range as a lot of these other ones and Moleskine, but they have more pages. They fit more. I'm not sure exactly, but it's similar page count to Moleskine. Let's see here. The pages are numbered in this one, which is nice. So we have 200 and I can't get to the end. 250, I think. Whoa, 251. All right. 251 pages. So these things are awesome. It has a similar kind of more paper feeling cover like the Moleskine. It's still very much a hardcover, but not that squishy leatherette kind of thing. The bookmarks are really nice. The elastic's really nice. And yeah, so I feel like it's very similar in the kind of experience it gives you with Moleskine, but it just does a better job. The paper is better. I don't have that fingerprint issue. Maybe just a tiny bit every now and then, but it's not a regular problem. And the paper here, no, it's not as luxurious as Clairefontaine or Rhodia, but I still really like it, actually. It's still really nice. Unless you're using some kind of really saturated or gushy ink, I don't get bleed in these. I did at first because like when I first got one of these, because I was using a really saturated gushy ink and I was so disappointed. I was like, I don't like this. And I put it on the shelf and didn't come back to it for a while. But since then, I really haven't had much of an issue. Again, every once in a while, if my pen is too wet or if an ink is too wet, maybe there's a little bleed, but for your standard inks and your standard pens, there's no issue. And the paper feels similar to me a little bit to Moleskine. Let me check that. The paper feels similar. This is maybe just a little thicker, but yeah, better. It's just a better experience, hands down. So if you are a Moleskine user and you would like to upgrade, I think this is your obvious choice if you want to stick with something similar. If you want to branch out and try something really different, Midori, Rhodia, Clairefontaine, lots of options, and there's more than that. Like I said, there's this whole world of paper, just like there's this whole world of fountain pens and whatever. If you're not a fountain pen user, if you're more of a pencil person than a pen person, of the notebooks I've talked about, I would probably recommend Leuchtturm and Midori because they have a little more texture to the paper that would probably handle pencils a little bit better than Rhodia, Clairefontaine, and those other ones. If you have any other recommendations for notebooks that you think are just amazing for fountain pens or amazing in general, please let me know in the comments because I would really like to check those out. I will talk to you later. Bye.